It was just past 3 a.m. when my girlfriend, Sarah, and I exited the interstate after the low fuel light blinked on. We'd been driving for hours, heading back from a weekend at her cousin's lake cabin. The trip was fun, but long. I wanted to make it home without stopping, but the needle was almost touching empty, so we took the nearest exit. The road was quiet. No buildings, no signs, just a two-lane strip cutting through what looked like farmland. After a few minutes, a dim yellow light appeared up ahead. It was a gas station, an old one with a flickering sign that just said, "Fuel Stop." We pulled in, and I immediately noticed how isolated it was. One pump, a small rectangular store with peeling paint, and a single beat-up pickup parked off to the side. The station looked like it hadn't been updated in years. Sarah stayed in the car while I got out to pump. I swiped my card and started filling the tank, but the system was slow. She rolled down her window and said she was going in to grab a bottle of water. I nodded, watching her step into the store, the doorbell giving a weak ding as she disappeared inside. I looked around while the gas flowed. The streetlight above the pump buzzed faintly. No other cars, just empty land stretching in every direction. A few minutes passed. I was watching the dollars tick up on the pump when I heard the bell again. Two men entered the store. I didn't think much of it at first. Both looked like laborers, worn boots, dirty jeans, and old flannel jackets. One of them carried a small red toolbox. The other was talking loudly on a phone, though his voice didn't carry any actual words I could make out. It was strange. He wasn't even holding the phone right. It was like he was pretending. That got my attention. I glanced at the truck parked on the side. It hadn't moved, and no one was in the driver's seat. Something about this whole place made me feel off. I tried not to let my mind race, but I felt an itch at the back of my neck. A kind of alertness I only felt during football practice when someone was about to blindside me. I stopped the pump early, put the cap back on, and walked toward the store slowly. From the window I could see Sarah standing near the fridge section, water bottle in hand, looking toward the counter. One of the guys was leaning on the counter, talking to the cashier. The other had disappeared down one of the aisles. I stepped inside. The air smelled like old coffee and dust. The cashier, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked tense. His hands weren't visible. His arms hung stiffly by his sides. The man with the phone now stood near the front door, still pretending to talk. The guy with the toolbox was behind Sarah, pretending to browse the snacks. Sarah looked at me with a flicker of concern, and I gave her a tiny nod. I walked over casually and said we should get going. She hesitated, then nodded. As we walked toward the counter, the man leaning on it suddenly turned and said, "You folks local?" "Just passing through," I replied. "Long drive at this hour. Not safe, you know." His voice was calm but carried something underneath it. A test, maybe. A way to measure our reactions. Sarah clutched the water bottle tighter, and I could see the cashier's eyes shifting, almost like he wanted to say something but couldn't. I pulled out my card and paid quickly. The man behind us moved closer, too close, just standing there like he had nothing better to do. The one near the door now had his back to us, but I noticed he had shifted slightly, blocking the exit more directly. My gut tightened. "Let's go," I said, a little too firmly. We moved toward the door. The man near it stepped aside just enough to not cause a scene, but didn't take his eyes off us. We got outside, and I kept Sarah close as we walked to the car. As soon as we got in, I locked the doors and told her not to say anything. I turned the key. Nothing. The engine didn't even click. I tried again. Still nothing. I looked up and saw the two men still inside, watching us. Sarah was starting to panic. I popped the hood and got out again. As I lifted it, I felt my stomach drop. The battery cables had been cut. Clean. With precision. That's when I understood. This wasn't random. It was planned. The fake phone call, the toolbox, the questions, they were stalling us. I walked back toward the driver's side, trying to stay calm, not letting them see I knew. I leaned in and whispered to Sarah that the battery was cut and we needed to run. She asked, "Where?" I looked down the road and spotted a thin row of trees, maybe a field or woods behind them. I told her to grab her bag and be ready. I waited until the men inside turned to speak to the cashier again, then opened the door quickly, pulled her out, and we ran. We didn't look back, not until we were deep behind the tree line, panting, crouched low, hidden by the brush. I heard shouting back at the station, then a vehicle starting, the pickup, headlights sweeping across the lot. They were looking for us. We stayed hidden, not moving, even as the truck slowly rolled down the road in the direction we ran. We didn't move until it was out of sight. Then we cut across the field, toward the lights of what looked like another road or maybe a farmhouse. Eventually, we reached a small house with a porch light on. We knocked, and an older man answered. I explained everything quickly. He let us in, called the sheriff, and gave us water. When the police arrived an hour later, they took us back to the station. The place was empty. No sign of the men, the pickup, or even the cashier. Just a dark, locked building. We filed a report, gave every detail we could, but nothing ever came of it. The gas station was listed as privately owned, but the owner hadn't been seen in months. It was one of those places that had slipped through the cracks. It's been a year since that night. I still think about it sometimes when I stop for gas late at night, about how close we were to something worse, about how careful the trap was set, and how lucky we were to recognize it just in time. Before we dive into the next horror story, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you never miss an upload. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, share it with your friends and family, and drop a comment with your suggestions. I'd love to hear from you. I've been working the night shift at Ridgefield Gas and Stop for almost 5 months now. It's not the most exciting job, but it's easy money and fits around my schedule. Most nights are slow, especially after midnight. The station sits on a long, quiet highway between two small towns. The only vehicles that pass by are the occasional long-haul truckers, police cruisers, or the rare late-night traveler heading somewhere with a good reason. After 1 a.m., you could stand in the lot for 10 minutes and not see a single pair of headlights. I mostly stay in the tiny office behind the counter, watching the security monitors and playing something on my phone to keep from dozing off. It's not glamorous, but it's simple. On the night this happened, it was a Thursday going into Friday. Things had been particularly slow. We'd had a few cars between 9 and midnight, and then nothing, not a sound. I was in the office chair, half watching a documentary with one earbud in, sipping cold coffee and thinking about what leftovers I had in the fridge back home. It was around 2:45 a.m. when the door alarm chimed, the soft ding that rings when someone crosses the entrance sensors. I looked up, expecting to see someone needing gas or a pack of cigarettes, but the entrance was empty. I leaned forward, squinting through the front windows. Still no one. No car had pulled up. Nothing on the lot. That kind of false trigger had happened before, though, especially if a bird or insect flew close to the sensor. I chalked it up to that and went back to my seat. Less than 5 minutes later, I noticed a shadow move across one of the side cameras, the one aimed at the air and water station around the corner. I paused the video I'd been watching and brought up the camera feed full screen. It was dark, and the side light was weak, but I could make out the faint shape of someone standing just outside the reach of the light. It looked like a man, maybe wearing a hoodie or a jacket with the hood up. He wasn't using the machine or heading for the door. He was just standing there, barely moving. I waited, thinking he'd come around to the entrance soon. but he didn't. After a minute, I checked the other cameras. No sign of movement on any of them. Just that one angle, with that figure standing like he was waiting for something, or watching. I felt a bit uneasy. It wasn't normal behavior, especially at that hour. I tapped the mic and made an announcement through the exterior speaker. "Hey man, we're open up front if you need something." The figure didn't respond or move. I kept watching for a while, but then curiosity got the better of me. I decided to go out to the front door and peek around the side myself. I stepped outside into the cool air, walked along the lit area near the windows, and leaned around the corner, expecting to see someone near the air pump. But there was no one. The side lot was empty. I glanced toward the far end where the dumpsters sat. Nothing. I even checked behind the air machine. Still nothing. It made no sense. I went back inside and checked the feed again. The man wasn't there anymore, just an empty lot. I rewound the footage. This time, I watched carefully. Sure enough, the figure had been there, standing in the same spot for over 4 minutes. But what made my skin crawl was that he never walked into frame. One frame he wasn't there, and then the next, he was. And then, without moving, he was gone again in the same abrupt way. No walking in, no walking out, like he was only visible when the camera glitched or something. I felt a knot in my stomach. I know how cameras work. This wasn't a normal glitch. I checked all the angles again. No signs of anyone. Still trying to stay logical, I figured maybe a local was messing around or some drifter was passing through. That wasn't unheard of out here. But I locked the front doors just in case. Then I went to the break room to grab a sandwich from the mini fridge. While I was back there, I heard something knock lightly against the back wall. Just a soft thud, like something tapping metal. The break room backed up to the rear storage area, which was connected to a solid service door that was almost never used. I stopped chewing and listened. A few seconds passed, and then another tap. A little harder this time. I stood still, holding my breath. There was a small slit-style window on the back door, positioned just above eye level. I dragged over a chair, stood on it, and peered out through the glass. It was pitch black. The outside light was out, which I hadn't noticed earlier. But just as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. A person, standing 10 feet away, just barely visible in the low light. No car, no bag, just standing perfectly still, facing the door. I couldn't make out the face, but the way he was standing was unnatural, like he was waiting for something to happen. I jumped down, locked the inner break room door, and went back to the main office. My hands were a little shaky now. I called the non-emergency police line and told them someone might be trespassing behind the station. The dispatcher took my name and said someone would swing by. Maybe 20 minutes, she said. I stared at the cameras, watching the back feed. But now that figure was gone again. 10 minutes later, the side motion sensor triggered. I pulled the side camera up, and once again, the same hooded figure stood under the broken light near the air machine. This time, though, he was closer to the wall, like he was trying to find a blind spot. I felt an instinctive panic. He was testing the building. I opened the intercom again. "Police are on the way," I said into the mic. No movement. But then he turned. Slowly. Not toward the door, toward the camera. He didn't run, didn't duck. He just turned to face it directly, like he was acknowledging me. That was enough. I pulled the shutters down on the windows and stayed inside, keeping my eyes glued to the monitors. I grabbed the small fire axe from under the desk. It was the only thing close to a weapon we had. 15 minutes later, a cruiser pulled into the lot. I met the officer at the door, explaining everything. He walked the lot, checked behind the store, and even stepped into the field briefly. Nothing. No one. No tracks, no signs of movement. He told me to keep the place locked and call again if anything happened. Then he left. The rest of the night, I didn't move from the office. I kept all the lights on and waited for sunrise. The camera stayed clear. But when I went out at dawn to open the station, I found something strange. Right at the base of the back wall near the service door were two perfect footprints in the dust. Like someone had stood there for a while. They were facing the door. I gave notice 2 days later. We were driving back from my cousin's engagement party in Chesterville, a small town about 2 hours from our home. It was past midnight, and the roads were mostly empty. My wife, Jenna, was half asleep in the passenger seat, her head tilted toward the window, while our daughter Kayla was in the back, scrolling through her phone with her earbuds in. The highway stretched ahead of us in long, dark lanes. I wasn't tired exactly, but I was starting to feel the weight of the day settle in. The gas gauge had been hovering near empty for a while, and I figured we'd better stop at the next station we saw. About 10 minutes later, I spotted a small green sign that read, "Gas, exit 52, 1 mile." I took the turn and followed a narrow road that led us through some trees before we reached a small, outdated gas station. It had 2 pumps, a flickering overhead light, and a small brick building that looked like it hadn't been renovated in decades. There were no other cars in the lot, and the place was surrounded by thick trees on 3 sides. A single convenience store light was on inside, but I couldn't see anyone through the glass. The place felt forgotten. I parked by the pump closest to the building and got out. The air was cold for a spring night. As I started fueling the car, I scanned the area. Everything was quiet, but I noticed something strange. A figure standing at the edge of the woods, about 30 or 40 feet away. It wasn't moving, just standing there. I blinked and looked again. Still there. I tried to convince myself it might be a wooden post or a tree stump playing tricks on me in the low light, but the outline looked too much like a person. I kept glancing toward the trees while the tank filled. I didn't want to alarm Jenna, who was still resting, or Kayla, who was now taking selfies in the back seat. When the pump clicked, I capped it and walked to the driver's side. Jenna stirred and asked where we were. I told her we stopped for gas and that I'd be right back. I wanted to use the restroom quickly. She nodded and closed her eyes again. The restroom was around the back of the building. As I walked along the side, I gave one last look toward the woods. The figure was gone. I paused, hoping I had just imagined it to begin with. I moved faster toward the back. The restroom door was metal and old, but it wasn't locked. I pushed it open and flipped on the light. Inside, it was surprisingly clean. I finished quickly and stepped back outside, expecting to hear the hum of our engine or see the glow of our taillights. But everything was still. Too still. When I rounded the corner to the front, the car doors were open. The back door on Kayla's side was wide, and her phone was on the ground next to it. The driver's door was ajar too, and Jenna's purse sat on the passenger seat, unzipped. My stomach dropped. I called out their names. No response. I walked quickly to the car, looking around in every direction. No one. Nothing. Just us, the car, and the trees. I picked up Kayla's phone. The screen was cracked, and her music was still playing faintly through one of her earbuds. I checked inside the car again. No sign of a struggle, no blood, nothing obvious, but they were gone. I grabbed my phone from the dash and dialed Jenna's number. It rang once, then went to voicemail. I tried Kayla's. Same thing. Then my phone rang, unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Don't leave, don't call the cops. You'll see them again if you listen." The voice was low and steady. No emotion, no accent I could place. I opened my mouth to speak, but the line went dead. I looked around again. Still no movement. I got back in the car, locked the doors, and sat for a moment, trying to think. What did they want? Why us? I remembered the figure in the woods. Was that one of them? Were they watching the station? Had this been planned? It didn't make sense. We hadn't argued with anyone at the party. We hadn't picked anyone up. We hadn't even stopped except for this gas station. I tried to recall if I had seen any other cars behind us on the highway. Maybe one. A pair of headlights far back before we exited, but I hadn't thought much of it then. I opened the glove box, found the small flashlight we kept there, and stepped out of the car again. I scanned the tree line where I'd seen the figure earlier. Nothing. I walked slowly toward the area, sweeping the light in wide arcs. A few steps in, I saw something on the ground, Jenna's scarf, half covered in dirt and leaves. I picked it up. It was damp. I turned in every direction, trying to hear anything. Footsteps, voices, breaking twigs. Silence, another buzz, another unknown number. Behind the building, alone, 5 minutes, no phone. That was it. Another command. My instinct screamed to ignore it, to call the police, but the voice knew I would hesitate. It knew what mattered most. I put the phone back in the car, grabbed the flashlight, and walked back around the station. Behind the building was darker than I expected. No lights, just shadows. The dumpster stood a few feet from the back wall, and a wooden shed leaned to one side beyond it. I stood there, waiting, unsure what I was supposed to do. Then I heard something, movement from inside the shed, a soft shuffle, maybe even breathing. I moved toward it slowly, trying not to make a sound. My hand trembled as I reached for the latch. It was unlocked. I pulled it open fast, shining the light inside. Empty, just tools and cleaning supplies. I stepped back, confused. That's when I heard the voice again, this time right behind me. "You took the wrong exit." I spun around. A man stood there, average height, wearing dark clothes and a mask pulled just below his eyes. He held a knife in one hand and what looked like duct tape in the other. He gestured toward the side of the building. "Move." Quietly. I backed away slowly, trying to keep the light between us. I was about to ask what he wanted when another voice called out from the trees. "He's not alone anymore. Let's go." The man's head snapped toward the voice. I used the moment to run. I didn't look back. I darted for the car, jumped in, and locked the doors. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. As it rang, I saw a movement in the rearview mirror. 2 figures running toward the road. Then another flash, blue and red lights approaching from the highway. I waved my arms when the patrol car turned into the lot. 2 officers stepped out, guns drawn. I told them everything, stumbling over my words as I pointed toward the trees. Backup arrived minutes later, along with a K-9 unit. They searched the woods and found signs of where someone had been. Shoe prints, broken branches, even a used cigarette, but no one was caught. They found Jenna and Kayla an hour later, tied up in an abandoned trailer less than half a mile from the station. Shaken but unharmed. The officers said we were lucky, that the people who did this had likely been setting up at that station for weeks, waiting for someone isolated enough to target. I think about that night often, how close we came. How something as simple as stopping for gas could almost cost everything. And how sometimes the last pump before the exit hides more than just bad lighting and old concrete. It hides people who wait for the right car, the right family, and just the right mistake.